Hello everyone and welcome to the Dyslexia Life Hacks Show. I'm your host Matthew Head, and in this episode I'm talking to Philip Burgin. He's the product specialist for Claro software. Before this he worked at DSA as a product trainer and an equipment supplier. If you'd like to understand more about Claro from a software development point of view, I'll direct you to episode 10 where I talk to Stuart Marston, who is the product manager for Claro. I will put links to that episode, as well as Claro and other things we talk about in the show notes, which will be available at dyslexialifehacks.com/podcast. Welcome to the show, Phil.
And thank you for having me.
No worries at all. I was having a bit of a skim through your bio. Before we get into some of your professional stuff, I see you're a bit of a retro gamer.
I have been, yes. I've got an Amiga 600. Nice. I had a Commodore 64 with a cassette drive. That was one of my, with Doctor Who, that was my favourite one, attacking a 16-pixel Dalek on tape and waiting for it to load. That was cool. And I actually enjoyed that game more than some of the modern sort of GTA 5 games today. You know, I like GTA 5. I play that now. Doing World of Warcraft, just getting dragged into that one, kicking and screaming. But the graphics are they're amazing on modern games.
Oh yes,
With ray tracing now, you can get the shadows. You can almost feel the warmth of the light on the screen touching your virtual hand. But nothing beats the Commodore 64 8-bit color screen and killing Daleks.
and the thing screaming at you for 5 minutes while it loads off cassette tape.
8-bit mono soundtrack, yeah.
You should, if anybody wonders what an 8-bit soundtrack is, YouTube it, and you can hear various different soundtracks at different bits. It's hilarious. One of the reasons I brought up your retro gaming is obviously you're a product trainer as your profession.
Yeah.
And you're dealing with software now. Is that kind of where it links into, that you kind of thought, gaming's good fun, and then your career worked through that? Or how did you get through to what you're doing?
Actually, it didn't. My career was one of stumbling into it by accident, which I think is brilliant, actually. Being dyslexic, I didn't think I was academic. I didn't think I was up to the geekiness of IT and things like that, because it's all like programming and codes and full stops and knowing how programming languages work. I couldn't even write my own name when I was at school. So to even think about doing programming code was way beyond me. So when I actually left school, I did various courses, hair and beauty, which the kids love to wind me up over.
And you don't have much hair now, do you?
I don't have much hair. Nope, that didn't serve me any purpose whatsoever. And then I went into sort of building and bricklaying, and that was one of my first passions. And I've actually built my own house a couple of times.
Oh, wow.
And it's hard work. And anyone who actually does build their own house, it took me 3 years to do the last one, and my poor old parents got dragged into it. Unfortunately, now I'm married with kids, and that sort of time is gone. But when I was sort of younger and sort of left school, I thought I'd sort of do some building work, and did it for not very long, a few months, and it got to winter. And then I realised working outside with the north wind blowing, cold, wet, laying bricks was not the future for me.
No, I could see that.
I actually thought I would go to college. I redid my GCSEs because I did okay at school. But being dyslexic, it was a question of getting through school.
Did you know you were dyslexic at school?
Not at the time. Everybody knew, in those days, they knew stuff was wrong. They knew I wasn't keeping up with the class. But in those days, dyslexia was a taboo subject. It wasn't to be talked about. It didn't exist. It's been made up by the government. And I actually remember one of my teachers at primary school in assembly saying that dyslexia didn't exist. It was made up. And this is actually a lecturer in a teacher in my primary school. And my father, bless me, didn't want me labelled and all the rest of it because nobody understood. It wasn't a good thing. It wasn't a bad thing. It's just nobody understood. So you can't lay criticism when you don't know.
No,
it's and this is what people do. They turn around and go, oh, they blame people for the past, and you think, but you didn't know what it was at the time. So how can you do something? You've got to learn, realize, and then adapt, and don't do it again. And that's the progression of learning.
Yes.
So I look back on my life and people go like, but weren't you sort of let down? Well, no, I wasn't let down, because how could I be let down when people didn't know what to do?
So, you're correct with, actually, it's a good example of most things that as you were saying about judging the past and people being horrible to you. But if they don't understand, then they can only react on the information they have. And then we've gone forward and iterated and understood more and more and more and realized that actually this is the attitude you should have at this point in time.
We can turn around and say, oh, you got it wrong, and blame people. But at the time, they were doing the right things that they could. I was fortunate in the fact my parents were very supportive. Very, very supportive parents, and they still are. And they've helped me and bailed me out of many a disaster in my time. And without them, I wouldn't be here. So I've got a lot to thank them for. And it was the same for my education. They sort of helped as best they could. The school helped as best they could. And sometimes the best way the school could help was not including me in things.
Right.
So people, when you're in the classroom and you had to read a page from a book, and then the next people reads a page from the next people reads it.
Yes, yeah. I know that one.
I was never asked at school.
Oh.
But I used to get stressed thinking they're going to ask me next. And it was in hindsight, when I look back, I thought, nobody ever asked me.
Yeah.
And what it was, my parents had gone and spoken to the teachers. The teachers had realized I got a problem. They didn't know how to help. So instead of causing stress and anxiety and making it worse, they just left me alone. So they're helping by not helping. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. They're not adding value, but they're also not stressing you out, I suppose.
Correct, because they didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So if you don't know what to do and you don't know how to help someone, because bearing in mind I was living in Cloudfield. I call it Cloudfield because it's like my little personal bubble. And it's great.
Okay.
And at school I had blonde hair, spiky blonde hair, a pink jumper, and they used to call me Pinky Punky from Timmy's Mallet as a way to wind me up. And because I was dyslexic and it made no sense to me whatsoever, it's in one ear and out the other. So nobody could bully me because I didn't understand what it was. They just gave up, which is quite nice.
Fair tactic. Yeah.
So if you don't react and nothing happens, and it just doesn't work, does it?
No.
And it was the same for education. The teachers, bless their cotton socks, they were trying. Here's some homework. Go and do your homework, and they'd sit and they'd help, and it'd just be in one ear and out the other. Because my cognitive ability at the time just wouldn't compute. Now, they can tell me off, oh, you haven't done your homework, put you into detention, and blah, 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 blah. But that's not going to achieve anything. But it means detention not doing homework and making me do homework at the end of the school. I'm still not going to do the homework because I didn't get it the first time.
Yes.
So that's just going to add more stress, and then I'm not going to want to go to school. So by keeping me in school and keeping me happy, by not putting me under that pressure, meant that I finished my education. Instead of rebelling because there was nothing to rebel against because I wasn't stressed.
Interesting. That is it's a very interesting point, actually.
So sometimes doing nothing is the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
Intervention can sometimes make it worse because you cause stress and anxiety.
So do you think if you had a lot more, say, intervention or negative stuff, do you think you would have rebelled and ended up going down a bit more of a darker path?
I would have just probably... Well, I don't know, because luckily it didn't happen.
Yes. Yeah.
But all I would know is that I wouldn't want to go to school. I would probably just refuse to go because I wasn't very good. I've probably got mild traits of autism. Again, I've never been diagnosed with this at all. But I don't really like close-up contact with people. It sort of creeps me out. So in school, it's a rugby school. They put me in the rugby scrum because I was skinny and fast. And it's the one place I hated being.
Yeah.
It was muddy, horrible, and getting squashed by bigger people than you wasn't my ideal of fun. I much preferred playing hockey with the girls. It was, if I was allowed to. So as a child, I often refused to go to school on PE days because it creeped me out.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, the school was kind enough to sort of say, okay, then, don't worry about it. We'll put you into another class in that 1 hour period. So I did extra English with a lovely gentleman. And the English lessons were things like topics of the day. So it would be like tennis topics or history topics, stuff that we were interested in. It wasn't just me. There's a few people around the school they gathered up to do this with. And it was a way of keeping me in school, keeping things relevant, and taking away the pressure and the stress.
Yes. Yeah.
So then I'd spend that 1 hour in a class, and then all I had to do then is join the other. Now the other kids didn't care because they enjoyed doing rugby, and they didn't notice I wasn't there. So it was a win-win. My parents were happy because I didn't want to go home, and I quite happily enjoyed going to school, and it was quite nice. So the school did what they could with what they had at the time.
Yeah.
And this is the problem today. There is no funding for schools, no additional funding from local education authorities.
Right.
Because you've got these centers, and I don't understand this. This is not my area of expertise.
Okay.
And it's that process of getting kids sort of assessed and then putting that support in place. And then it's all the budgets that's involved. And there's a lot of pressure on the budgets anyway because of, well, inflation today is rocketing and everybody is struggling. And the same with schools. And it's a shame because the financial support isn't there. But schools, without that financial support, can do more through education of the staff and through understanding people's sort of conditions, dyslexia. One I've come across is development language disorder, which I'm familiar with dyslexia, like we all are. That's sort of a common. 10% of students or have dyslexia, but 8% of students have development language disorders. It's the second biggest SPLD.
Okay, and just to enlighten me, what is development language disorder?
It's a person who has difficulty talking or understanding language.
Right. Okay.
If I say, hello, my name is Phil, you'd go, I don't know what you just said. You wouldn't be able to concept the word hello and my and name is Phil, though you wouldn't be able to put that in a sentence and understand the meaning or interpret that sentence.
Yeah.
So this is what happens. Now, hello, my name is Phil is a very traditional sentence. So,
yes. So I guess you learn a stock answer to that. Like,
you would.
Hi Phil, how are you? Yeah.
It's like if I said to you in French, bonjour, je m'appelle Philippe, ça va bien. You go, ça va bien, merci.
Yeah.
I'm probably saying it badly. Sorry, French people. But you would have learnt the response, but you don't know what the response means.
Yeah.
Now, people with DLD learn the response, but they have no idea what's going on. They're hearing it, but they're not understanding it. And that is something that sort of has come to sort of light in my world, because I'll be speaking to the guys at work and I'll use some cracking, lovely sounding words and I'll have no idea what they're talking about. And I'll have to go around and go like, can you just translate what you've just said for me? And with the greatest smile on their face, they then explain all the jargon to me. And I'm like, okay, then I have to write it down, because literally within half an hour, I've forgotten what they've said. Because it has no technical language, programming language, because I'm not in it every day. It's not something that sticks in my head.
Yes.
That repetition and that continual use.
Yes.
So I have to make lots of notes and then keep asking the same question. And when I was young, asking the same question, people, well, don't you understand? Haven't you got it yet? So you don't want to go back and ask the question again? So you'd hide in the corner. And that's one of the joys of working for Claro, because bless Stuart and Andreas. The amount of times I'm sort of messaging Stuart, he goes, I swore I told you that. I said, you did. Just tell me again. And he does. And he's lovely.
Yes.
And that is one of the advantages of working in the DSE industry, is everybody's very accepting. And this is where we've come, I've already said that again. This is where we've got to in the last 20 years. 30 years ago, you would have just been sort of put in the corner of the room and told to go away.
Yeah.
Or you got to pull your socks up and get on with it. Whereas now there's a sort of an understanding of dyslexia and DLD and dyscalculia and CDC and all these lovely acronyms that we're sort of coming out with. I'm going to have to try and remember what they all mean. But as a whole, everybody's becoming more aware of it and more accepting of it. And it's just, oh, I've got dyslexia. Oh, that's fine. It's sort of an accepted norm, I would say today.
Yeah.
And if somebody trips over a sentence, you're like, oh, that's fine. We know what you mean. And carry on. If you were doing an English test and that English test was writing, then you would have to have good writing.
Yes. Yeah.
If you're doing a science test, you just need to know how to make that chemical equation work. If your spelling is slightly out, but you can still get that chemical equation, you are being marked on your science, not the spelling. And that's where I think education should be.
Yeah.
Marked on your skill, not your written. If you are doing a written exam for written English because you are doing Shakespeare, fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah. You are assessed on that because that's what it's testing. And as you say, the science thing, if it's describe what the difference between, I don't know, laminate and turbulent flow over an airplane wing. And you mention everything, but there's grammatical and spelling errors.
Shouldn't count.
Yeah, surely if you demonstrate it, well, you just draw a diagram with the circles, to be honest. But if you're allowed to. Quick, here's a picture. But that kind of thing is, I could tell you what that is. But writing an exam would be tricky for me way back when I was a teenager.
Correct. And it shouldn't be that way. You should be able to sort of explain and get your point across because you're being marked on your understanding, not the spelling.
Yes.
And yet schools do emphasize a lot on spelling, I think, a lot. This is personally opinion.
Yes. No.
But computers today and mobile phones have all got spell checkers. I'm convinced that the general population spelling has got worse because of IT.
We definitely have a lot of, should we say, safety nets for spelling and grammar now, don't we?
but this is now normal. It's every day.
Yes.
It's in our homes. It's in our TVs. You don't even have to press a button on the TV remote anymore. Just press a microphone and say whatever program you want, and it finds it for you.
Yep.
And that's like really creepy. This TV's listening to me. It's talking to my phone and my laptop, and I can move from one room to another, and my laptop knows I've been watching Top Gear in the other room. It's like, how is that possible? So, but technology has brought those advantages to us because it's now supporting our lives. And you don't have to remember the everyday mundane tasks because the computers do it for you. You can actually now concentrate on what you enjoy. If you enjoy sort of reading, you've got text to speech and it'll read it to you.
Yes, or audio.
Because I was actually looking at my reading age the other day, and it was about 8 or 9. I was like, gosh, it hasn't improved at all. So reading speeds, so words per minute.
Yeah.
Sort of 6 to 7 year olds, it's about 53 words a minute.
Okay.
Reading. 7 to 8 year olds, it's 89 words a minute.
Yeah.
8 to 9 is 107 words a minute.
Yeah. Sounds impressive.
That's very roughly. Well, I'm sort of between 7 and 8, I think. Probably around 89 to 107. But when you get to sort of high school or college, so if we're talking sort of high school, college, sort of uni side of things, the average expected reading speed is 300 words a minute.
That sounds racing fast.
That is. Now, there's roughly about 500 words a page on an academic document if you format it with your line spacing and margins and stuff. So you're reading 3/4 of a page almost in a minute.
Yes.
I can't do that.
No, I don't think I could. I haven't been tested for a long, long time, but I think I'd struggle. I might be able to do it for the first 2 pages and then run out of steam.
I wouldn't even do it for the first page. I take one look at it and just, nope, close the book. Now, I know it's possible because a friend of mine read Harry Potter, the entire book, in about 2 days.
What?
And he read the whole series in like a week and a bit. I I was like, yeah, I'd still be on. A year later, I'd still be on the introduction.
Did you quietly admire these people who could take a novel with them on holiday? And I finished it when they get back.
I do quietly admire them, but I cheated and went to Harry Potter World instead.
Yeah, that'd do it. Visual experience. Yeah,
that's the one. Yeah,
and there's a movie. Yeah,
and the movie. So, but it's things like this, and this is what gets people down, because students on the whole get told that you've got a reading list and you've got to work through this reading list, and this is all the material you've got to get through. And very few people are actually on target for their words per minute. Very few, when you actually think about it, because of practice. So this is where text-to-speech comes in handy, because you can set your little text-to-speech to about 180 words a minute.
Yeah.
Click on play. You can read along with it, and it doesn't stumble over the words. It doesn't get the sentences wrong. You just sit there and listen and read with it, and then you've actually hit your word count perfectly.
Yes. Yeah.
As long as you're interacting with it and reading with it. Although, sort of, if you've got ADHD and ADD, you'd probably wander off halfway through and forget what you've done, and then come back and do it again. But that's the repetition. That's part of the sort of doing it again. And if you've got a passion for your subject, you will do that. Yeah. If you're finding the subject tedious, then it becomes tedious. So it's always best to find something that you actually enjoy doing. And I'm fortunate I enjoy doing my job. And actually, going back to your earlier question, found this job by accident. Because I was doing bricklaying. This is part of the going off on tangents, which I'm good at.
Yeah. Nicely coming back on course.
Oh, yeah. Just to smooth it in. I did my bricklaying, and I got to winter, and it's really cold and miserable. And I quite liked IT, and I've been playing around with the Amiga 600 and the Commodore, and I said, because everybody had PlayStations and Segas and Nintendos, that was it. Yep. And I didn't. Mum and Dad bought me a computer that you could actually have WordPress or something on it, not WordPress, WordStar or something. You could actually type on it. And you could like paint programs, and it was the early version of what we would call a Windows machine today.
Yeah.
It had a mouse and a filing system, and in those days, computers were still on DOS. So Amigas were the first to have an operating system that resembled a Windows. Yes. Atari did as well. So that's what I was into at that sort of age. So a computer course was at the local college. So I started with a HNC.
Okay.
Because I knew I wasn't the quickest of learners. So I wasn't going to go straight into a degree, because I would have just melted instantly. And that sort of shock would have been of being on your own too much. I liked being around my family at that point.
Fair enough.
My mum looked after me lots. Typical mummy's boy. College, yes. I started at college. I thought it's going to be a slow process for me. I knew it was going to be slow. To go further, I needed to retake my English and retake my maths. I got a D in maths, and I got a D in English. So I'd only missed by 1 grade.
Okay.
And I did pretty well at school, because I got B in geography, C's in sciences. So I did overall, but maths and English I was struggling with them. Generally because of dyslexia and dyscalculia. Although dyslexia is what I'm diagnosed with, nothing else. Everything else is circumstantial, if that makes sense. Okay. Yeah. But it normally goes hand in hand, to be fair. I can walk into an open door. So I've got dyspraxia. I'm convinced of it. So I did the IT course and finished that one. And I went on to the HND and took it from there, really. So I redid my maths and English, and I pulled my English up to a B and pulled my maths up to a C. It took me a few attempts at my maths, because that was harder than English. Maths is never a strong point. It's got better over the years through practice. And then I went on to do an apprenticeship with the local DSA company. Well, it wasn't a local DSA company then. It was just an ordinary local IT company.
Right, okay.
And I started as a build engineer, putting together computers for corporate people and like local solicitors or estate agents or bits and pieces like that. And went on to do technicals, so on-site technicals, working with the council. I was going out to council offices where the firm had sold computers to councils. This is before the days of Dell, and Dell were around, but they're American and they hadn't got here yet. Right. So everybody was still using local firms. And I left, so I sort of went off to Cheltenham Uni at the time. and then came back. I did sort of a stint for PC World and a few other sort of companies. And I ended up actually back with the company I started with in the beginning.
Okay.
Which is quite nice. But I went back I was going to go back as an engineer, but they didn't have a position at the time. So they put me into stores. And they'd started to do DSA at that point with the local college. So I was actually delivering computer equipment to students. So I was actually driving around the country in my little car, stuffed full of big monitors in those days that weighed a ton, big base units that sort of you had to carry under each arm, and dropping them off. And everybody was really, really appreciative, because computers in those days were very expensive, very rare. It's the big high streets. Escom, I think it was, Tiny. They've all been and gone. They'd had a go at the marketplace and they'd gone, and it was still sort of new. It was still that sort of magical. Oh, it's a computer! Wow, it's a shiny box with lights in it. Nowadays, you just log on to a local river named resale site.
Yes.
It's somewhere in Brazil, and that one, or a local or a big auction site ends in Bay, and you just buy one and it arrives in the box, and it's next day as a rule, and it's all really cool. But those days didn't exist. Sort of 20 odd years ago. Well, probably a bit more than that. So the IT company sort of started working in DSA with delivering to the laptops, and I did that for a while. I loved talking to students and dropping off the kit and just hearing their stories, and they would tell me what they were doing and the courses they were doing and why it was being dropped off, and this is really, really cool. And I was then offered a training role, so I do a bit of training and a bit of delivery, and then I went into sort of doing accounts and looking after assessment centres, and then I was offered a job in another organization where I then became a trainer. And I did that then for 12 years. I'm still doing it now, still doing training now.
Yes.
And I really enjoy doing the training because I actually get feedback from students. One of my students, I've taken her from a 40%, she was just over 40% on her assignments, to 60%.
Wow.
So I got her comfortably out of that sort of danger zone of and that's just by teaching some of the techniques that we use. That's the planning techniques, the referencing techniques, the proofing techniques that we can do in the software. And it's good. Another student because my student who was 40%, her English was her second language.
Okay.
So by having text to speech was really helpful because she could actually then listen to the words. Now with Clara, you can even choose your own accent, so she could choose an accent closer to her own accent.
Which is really good. Of course. Yeah.
So one of the students was Polish, and she was struggling with written English. So we just found a Polishy sounding computer voice, obviously.
Yes.
But because it had the sort of the accent that's sort of in her head, it then started making more sense.
That is kind of clever. I hadn't thought of doing that.
We've got 80 voices to choose from in Claro, which gives us one of the biggest vocal ranges. We've got Italian, Spanish, French, German accents. So you can sort of mix it up, which is quite nice. So if English isn't your first language, you can find an accent that will read in English, because we're in British English. And it just gives you that sort of psychological comfort.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Familiarity.
That's the word, a better word, which is quite nice. And I find that helps a lot. And it certainly helped for this lady. It improved. I saw a good response. Another student of mine, she's just got 80%, 84 and 87% in a row.
Nice.
On the last 3 assignments.
That's good, sir.
I said, can I borrow your bit of text and put it on my thing at work just to show everybody? She said, yeah, it's fine. Because without your help, she said, I would never have done it. And that's why I still do what I do, because I can see some fantastic results when you have an engaged student who's doing something they're passionate about, and they want to sort of understand education and how they can learn techniques to improve their quality. That's what matters. People call it a difficulty. It's not a difficulty when you understand it. It's not a difficulty when you've got techniques.
Yes. Yeah.
People go, it's a disability. It's not a disability. It's a different way of thinking. Once you understand the way of thinking and can actually put that across, the jigsaw puzzle makes sense.
Yes.
And it's finding those different pieces of that jigsaw puzzle. And sometimes it's like a 1,000,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and sometimes it's an 8-piece jigsaw puzzle. I much prefer the 8-piece jigsaw puzzles to myself, but everyone's different. And with the more complicated symptoms, conditions, I don't quite know the right wordage to use nowadays, because it's sort of neurodiverse, I would say. You can have several dyscalculia, ADHD, ASD, you could have dyslexia, you can have a number of these things all sort of in the same pot, so to speak. And that makes your jigsaw puzzle 1,000 jigsaw puzzles pieces.
Yes. Yeah.
And you've got to start at the edge, find all the edge pieces, and then work to the middle.
Yes. Yeah.
And sort of build it up. And that takes time. So
it does. Yes.
Those jigsaw puzzles would take weeks. And that's why DSA have sometimes lots and lots of training sessions. Then somebody will only have like 2 or 3 training sessions. Well, why? Well, they might have dyslexia, and their area, their jigsaw puzzle might just be spelling, in which case it's like 2 or 3 jigsaw puzzle pieces. There's 4 pieces. That's the 4 corners that it's done.
Yes.
In which case, it's great. But the minute you put that jigsaw puzzle together for them, you've helped. That puzzle is done, because it doesn't matter how big or small that puzzle is. The person's stuck. They can't do the puzzle.
Yeah. So let's focus a little bit on your own personal jigsaw puzzle. Carry on this analogy. At some point between school, college, going back to university, working various jobs, you mentioned you were officially statement of dyslexia. When was that?
It was about college. I was in my teens.
Right. Okay. And what was the kind of the event that tipped that into B?
It was wanting to do my maths and English and needing extra time in the exams to get those done. My parents were worried because my thinking ability at the moment, if at school, you get taught to ignore the question and move on to the next one and then go back and do it again if you get stuck.
Yes, you do. Yes.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense to me now. Go back to when I was 18, I'd just stop.
Yes.
Like, I can't do this, and that'd be it. I can't move on because I have to do it in order, because you were taught to do things in order. You were taught to do things in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in steps. So my brain at the time was very much like, it's got to be in this order. And this is where writing helper comes in handy for students nowadays, because it's a 7-step process. And that's why Stuart did it, because it stops that from happening. And it's true, it does work. For me, now I've got around that, I'm much more visual, I find. I like mind maps. So we've got Claro Ideas built into the Claro toolbar for free. And I just make bubbles and stick titles in and all sorts of wonderful things. And Stuart says, I drive Stuart potty, because he goes like, I don't know how you can do those mind map things. But that's just me. And it's what you get used to. It's what you get comfortable using as well.
Yeah.
Because people will have different software and they go, I can't use that. And I can. Look, click. But you've got to have a reason why. Knowing how something works is one thing, but knowing why it works is something completely different.
Yes, yeah.
And I always have to know the whys. Anyway, sorry.
No, so that's cool. It's very clever of you to weave in all the Claro stuff in amongst the answers to all your questions.
You've got to try, haven't you?
Very well trained here, clearly. So, your teenager, statement to dyslexia. You obviously don't know what Claro is at this point.
No, I didn't know.
So, apart from the extra time in exams, what other things did you implement then to help you, particularly with your English and maths grades, get them up to where you needed to be?
In those days, repetition.
Oh, just sheer
dogged determination, repetition, doing it again and again and again and again. Now, in my day, it was called short-term memory. We call it working memory today.
Yes.
And repetition is brilliant for working memory because you can cram it all in, do your test, pass. A week later, forgotten everything.
Oh yes, I've got stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the trick with long-term memory is visualizing what you're trying to do. So you're turning things into a story. You're turning things into pictures. So if you're using Claro Ideas as a mind map, let's say, instead of just putting a random square bubble on the screen, you'd go to your pictures folder. You'd find a picture of your mum in a bad mood. You'd put your mum in the middle of your mind map. You'd put your ideas out. So when you open up your mind map and see your mum, you think, I've got to tidy my room. Because you now associate that picture with tidying your room, and you just think, oh my God, I haven't tidied my room. My mum's going to kill me.
And then just the bubbles be like,
put the clothes in the drawer.
Put the clothes in it. Yeah.
That's the one. I'm sorry, Mum. I'm just picking out a really bad example. But it works for history. If you just put King James V, there's a picture in the middle of your mind map. It's King James V. It ain't going to make any sense to you. If you actually go somewhere, take a photograph of you standing in the cathedral where he stood, you've now got that memory of being there. That now has a reason, it has a purpose. So when you see that picture, you remember being there and you remember the events that happened. So you're now building that visual concept as well. And it's to me, that works with history because I say geography I got a B. History I loved as well. Got good grades in that because I could visualize it all. Maths, I cannot visualize.
No, I can understand that.
So I had maths, I struggled to connect 2 + 2 = 5, basically, because I couldn't attach an image, a thought, a purpose. I couldn't attach anything to it to be able to take it from that working memory to that long-term memory. Yeah. Because I didn't visualize myself as being a mathematician or going to the moon or doing calculations of quantum mechanics. It just, no. But then computers came along and did it for you. Like, great.
Yeah. Yes, they did. They did come along and do it for you. Now, depending on what you're doing in life, sometimes you need to understand why the computer spat that number out in the first place.
Yes, you've got to know that it's right. Yes.
Yeah. My equation makes sense, and I have no idea why. It's sometimes not very useful.
Although the good old scientists that put equations in computing on that, the computer, we must have done it wrong. The calculations must be wrong. The computer, it can't possibly be this answer the computer's given us. And they spend years sorting it and go, oh yeah, it was right. It's like, it's a computer.
Yeah.
It's only going to do what you put in.
Exactly. Yes. There's a classic thing. I think it's one of the Mars rovers they were about to send, and somebody forgot to do the Unix version from imperial to metric. All the computer was out by that factor. So yes, the computer calculated beautifully, but they put the wrong number in the first place.
It's like, oops.
So yeah, sometimes, having an understanding of what the maths means can be useful, says the engineer.
Bless.
So cool. So you worked through, and now you've clearly quite passionate about training people working with Claro as your current role now. Being dyslexic yourself and maybe having some other neurodiversities rolled in there that you've kind of self-diagnosed, I guess?
I'd say self-diagnosed, yeah. Dyslexia definite, but everything else is just like, in this job, when you start looking at all the, I hate to say this word, like tick lists, they really give me the heebie-jeebies. But you have these sort of tick lists and boxes that you put people in, and neurodiverse doesn't work that way, but it helps people understand. So sometimes helping people to understand, even if it's the wrong method, you're still helping people understand, if that makes sense. And I've looked at these tick lists and I've gone, oh, I've got that one, I've got that one. And it's sort of like, I tick pretty much most of everything that I see, to be honest.
Yeah, there's a previous guest, Emma Downer, I think it was, and kind of wasn't sure whether they had southern neurodiverse condition, but she just like, well, if I Google what helps these people, I think it's concentrate on a particular example, and it works for me, then I just carry on.
Well, this is it. Yeah, it is what it is. I can't change who I am. I can't. People sometimes worry: is it a disease you can catch, or is it a condition, and is there a pill to cure it? And it's just this is going back now.
Yeah,
well, this is 30 years ago. Sort of people sort of didn't understand, and thankfully science has helped us on that one. But people think it's a disease; it's something you catch. It's something you're born with. Yes, you can say it's genetic, but a disease in medicine, if you say, "Oh, it's a disease," it's because it has a characteristic.
Yeah,
it's not something you can catch. But if you go to the general society and say, "Oh, I can catch it like the plague," no, that's not what a disease actually is.
Yes, yeah.
So it's the medical world meets the human world, and it's gone wrong. And this is what's happened with dyslexia and dyspraxia and all these sort of neurodiverse terms. And people go, it's a disease. Medically speaking, it's one thing. But for society, it is who people are. It is the way the brain is wired. It is, and everybody's brain is wired differently. You just have more traits. Some people don't like hugs. Some people don't like the light being on. Some people don't like words because they move on the page.
Yes, yeah.
Some people absolutely run around like lunatics. And you think, will you ever calm down? And then they turn into Limp Christie and win the gold at the Olympics and become great heroes. Yes. People who don't like noise fly into space and build great space stations because it's peaceful out there. And they become these great people because they have skills that sort of make them brilliant at what they do. Mm-hmm. And it's getting the right people in the right places with the right skills that make the people excel at what they're good in.
Yes.
And that's hope, and that's education. And that is going to getting a degree, that's getting a master's, that's getting a doctorate, wherever you want to sort of, whatever level you want to do, you can do it. Everybody can do a degree. Everybody can do a master's. Everybody can do a doctorate. The idea is finding the one that suits you. Yes. Finding the one that you have a passion for. Finding the one that you can actually see yourself doing and making a difference. And if you get that combination right, it's no longer a degree. It's no longer holding you back. It's now a vocation that you have a passion for. And nothing will hold you back. And a lot of people go and do a degree because that's what you do after college.
Yes.
My parents have told me I've got to get one because my friends are getting one, and my friend's going off to a uni in the south, so I'm going to go with them. Have you actually thought about the course you're doing and what you actually want from it? No, they're doing it. Now, it's not a wrong approach because you can be like me and stumble into these things and accidentally get it right, which is cool. But you can also then stress yourself out at the same time. It's how you handle that stress and how you get out of it that matters. Luckily, I stumbled around and my parents were able to help me out and bail me out of all sorts of things, bless them. And they did. And that kept me going.
Yeah.
Because my parents, now I'm fortunate that my parents were lovely parents. They are lovely parents. They're still here. They are lovely parents, I should say. Mm-hmm. I'm fortunate, but a lot of people out there aren't. Mm-hmm. A lot of people out there feel isolated. They feel alone. They feel that they've gone to this big, scary institution on the other side of the country. They're trying to make friends when they don't like hugs. They don't like going out. And they're lost. So they've got all this newness, plus trying to do a course that they probably haven't sort of thought about.
Yeah.
And they're then sort of struggling and thinking, where can I get help? No one's telling them because they don't know about DSA. Mm-hmm. Because they've been living in this bubble at school and now they've left that bubble and they're somewhere else. And the stress and the anxiety must go through the roof. And about 5% of students drop out about Christmas. They start in September, come Christmas, they never go back again.
Yeah, I can see that.
Simply because they just get home and think, I was going to say, thank God it's over, but I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on a pod. They just go, no, I can't cope. And it's a shame. If they'd had the support and the guidance and perhaps someone to talk to and sort of guide them, then yes. I was fortunate in the fact that I knew that I wasn't going to be that quick. So I went to college, I did H&C, and I worked and I did things slowly, and I just sort of built my knowledge up rather than trying to go straight into a degree. Even then, my first degree didn't end well. I ended up going home because it was new. It was leaving home. I'd never left home before because college was literally 15, 20-minute walk, and I used to walk. Mm-hmm. And if I try that now, I'd probably have a heart attack. It was up a hill. A lot thinner and a lot more fitter than in those days going to college. But it was. I knew I wasn't the quickest, so I wasn't in a race. So I was happy on my own, setting the goals at my own rate. Mm-hmm. And even then, I used to set some completely unrealistic goals. Because my mum was just like, "What are you doing now? I'm going to do this by Friday." It's like, "No, you're not." No, you're not. It's quite funny because I can never read my own handwriting, and my mum could.
Oh, interesting. Could she?
She's like, "What have I written here?" Oh, you said such and such. How can you read my writing? I wrote it. It hasn't much improved now. So, because computers, you just type everything or use Dragon and dictate it in. So you don't have to you don't have to write.
You do indeed. So, focusing on sort of using the Claro software, because obviously I've spoken to Stuart before, and he's a non-dyslexic that develops the program and the philosophy behind that. But you are a dyslexic that now uses and teaches the programs. Yeah. Now, with your DSA background, you must have a lot of experience of various other things as well as Claro. How are you finding the software from your perspective? And do you end up kicking stuff back up the team, sort of like, I'm not sure on this bit?
Constantly. I've actually grown in confidence at Claro Office, bless. And I had a list of things I wanted changing in Writing Helper. And I sent them to Stuart because, to me, I wanted things to work in a certain way. I like notes and I like calendars. And I like knowing what I'm doing. And Stuart was sort of like, that's a really good idea. I'll put that in the next one for you. Thanks, Stu. He also says, is there any assessor feedback or is there any student feedback? I go, no, it's all me. Because when you're sort of putting plans in, because you've got development teams to look after. We've got 6 products within the DSA group that all need development time. So you can't just dream up ideas and have it done overnight. It's got to be a schedule put in. It's got to be put into a development plan. It's because it's coding and all sorts of things that's necessary. Stuart's got to check it to make sure that the ethos is still there and the flow is still within the software, etc., etc. Yes. So I do come up with some very crazy ideas, and to be fair, bless him, Stuart's ace. Sort of takes it on board, makes a note, and sort of takes those ideas and builds on them, which is brilliant. As regards Claro Read, I should say, I'm going to get shot. Don't put Claro in the thingy because I get told off by Andreas on a regular basis. Claro Read. For Claro Read, for example, I love sort of placeholders. So they've brought back Screen Marker from 2015, which is now included. And it's great because if you know how to use it, and do go to one of the webinars and have a look, you can actually sort of mark lines of text. So when you're using Screen Ruler, which highlights the line, the ruler follows the mouse. So if you're on a line and you suddenly want to click onto a blank document to make notes of what you're reading, you're moving the ruler. Yes. So you want a screen marker to mark the line you're on. So when you move the ruler, you know where to go back to.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
It is literally a piece of clip art that sticks on your screen that shows you where you were. That's how simple it is. But for me, it works brilliantly.
All right.
And once I explain it to people, they go like, "Oh yeah, that's really good." Yeah, it's a light bulb moment. But because it just looks like a pin from clip art, it gets ignored because nobody realizes what it's actually for. But if you right-click and go into the menu and change it to a long bar, and you can have multiple coloured ones, so you can have yellow for one subject, green for another subject, pink for another subject, you can actually sort of mark your lines, put your ruler on so you can sort of, it helps you focus. You can sort of black out the top and bottom of the ruler, obliterate it.
Yes.
And then type away. And it's really cool. It helps you focus. Because my focus, as you probably tell, is all over the place.
I'd have never guessed.
I can go from one subject to another, back again, and people are like, how did you get there? The laws of physics, Jim.
So how, I'm curious to know really, because obviously you don't work for the GSA anymore, and you're now with Claro, and you're teaching people. So how do the people know that they need you to teach them? Is the DSA allocating them Claro and then go, hey, talk to this guy? Or is there a bit of, we're Claro, this will really help you kind of going on?
No, my teaching is separate to Claro.
Right.
I was teaching before I was working for Claro Software.
Okay.
And when I sort of came across Stuart, because Stuart had put a job out there, Nicole from Text Help and Stuart from Claro Software needed someone to support them with the Claro Read product. And Text Help put the advert. I'll tell you the story now. And I was somewhere else, and I was a little bit fed up this one day. I phoned up a friend of mine called Ed, who used to be a trainer, but he'd gone on to work for another DSA software company.
Yeah.
And I was sort of having a chat with him, and he just said, there's a job going at Text Help. Really? He said, doing the Claro Read software. The only thing is, it was 4:30 and the job advert closed at 5:00 that day.
I can see a problem here.
So I was just like, thanks, Ed. I will apply for that now. So I literally wrote out my application letter on my phone. Apologised profusely saying I was at work, and emailed it and hoped for the best.
Yes.
I then had an email, then didn't hear anything back. I thought, okay, fair enough. Then I had an email back over the weekend from Andy, who's an HR manager at Antrim, who said, thank you for your application. It was sort of greatly received. Please, can you send us an official one? I thought, cool, I've made it by the skin of my teeth. This is how my life works, literally by the skin of my teeth. And so I put the proper CV together and the job history and everything, and submitted it. And then I didn't hear anything back. And I thought, that was it. I thought it was a few months, and I hadn't sort of heard. And then I had a phone call from Stuart asking if I wouldn't mind. Yeah, it was Stuart asking if I wouldn't mind an interview. At which place I went to pieces, thinking, "Oh my God, it's the first interview in like 10 years." And even when I became a trainer, I sort of fell into that. I didn't have an official interview then. So the last official interview I'd had was probably 20 or 30 years ago, to be fair. Because I sort of came out of school at 16, went to college, then I worked as suppliers, then uni, then back into the same supplier I worked with. So I sort of knew the people, so it was sort of recommended through recommendation and sort of that way. So this was the first interview I'd had in probably a long time, I would say. Since I can remember, to be fair, which is not that long ago. And he said, did you have an interview? So we sat down, we had an interview over Skype. And he said, do you know this product called Writing Helper? And I said, no. Because at the time it was being developed. It was still version 1. Yeah. We're now on version 4. And it was being sort of taken to market. And this was what Stu was wanting to do. So they were looking for something to go after the Claro Read product. I said, right, you need to do a presentation and present Writing Help as if you were talking to a DSA assessor or an audience. So I had to go away and learn this software and then present it that I'd never seen before, which is really cool. And I did. And I'm here because of that interview. And I'm quite happy and glad. So Writing Help actually has a really special place in my heart because it actually got me the job with Claro Software, courtesy of Stuart. Now, since then, we're now on version 4. We've got cracking referencing in there. And we've got sort of drop and drag and sort of we've got drop and drag. And we've got speech bubbles and guides, and it's got a lot more sophisticated. It really is a decent piece of software. And I put together psychology reports on it now just for a laugh. Like, what? I did Bowlby. Yep, I did Bowlby, Piaget, Maslow, and somebody else. And I can't remember somebody else. Just because, what was it? The XY theory. X to Y theory. Did it just because I just see how well I could actually put a report together, and how well I could sort of structure that research. And I could. I pulled it together really, really well, produced a 4,000-word document within about 2 weeks.
Nice.
And that's me being dyslexic who can't spell for toffee.
Oh.
Memory like a sieve. So when people say, do you use the software? I use all of it. Genuinely use all of it. I have to use it and know it and like it to be able to teach it and show it to people. If I can't use it, I can't show it because it doesn't work in my head, if that makes sense.
Yes. Clearly using writing helper in an interview and then using it to work out how to write psychological essays, which is quite impressive to be able to just bang them out because of the way writing helper works. That's really cool.
When I first used writing helper, and I come across it because it was new, I hadn't used it before. It was a different concept to the way I was used to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a visual person. I like colours. Now, Writing Helper does actually have the colour system in it, as it lays out your sort of sections and subsections. But since I did the interview, tasks have been added. And tasks are very, very important, because when you're planning out an essay to write up, you might want to sort of look at a particular author or look at a particular theory.
Yeah.
And you don't want to forget to do that. So you can actually set yourself a task to say, look up X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
And you can set these tasks throughout Writing Helper. So when you get to the end, if you haven't ticked them, you think, oops, I got to go back and fix it.
Yeah.
And for me, as you probably tell, who goes from here, there, and everywhere, missing stuff out is a probability. It's going to happen. It's a certainty, I would say. So it's nice to see sort of features like that put into it.
Obviously, you do a bit of training on that. And other things. How does the training, I know it's very, very tailored to the individual, but I hate to use this word, but as a kind of average starting point, how would you start it when you meet somebody fresh? How would you go into, right, I need to train them this way?
Well, typically, I don't know. Because due to data protection, sometimes students don't tick the option to share.
Okay.
So I didn't even know what they've got.
Oh, I see. You just turn up.
So I
cold.
literally have a name and that's it. And I've got very good at working it out very, very quickly.
Yes.
So the ladies in the office, bless their cotton socks, are brilliant people. If SF, student finance, have not sort of passed that information on, they go, feels very good. I can work with it. So I tend to get students who are more challenging. I had one student who I started off and saying, hello, how are you? And what course are you studying? And how do you like to learn? And what's your hobbies? So I tend to have a bit of a chat with them first, a bit like we did at the beginning, and sort of get a feel for what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Yeah.
And different courses, cause I've done most of the courses through other students for one way or another. So I've got sort of quite a eclectic mix of knowledge. And this one student never said anything. She said, hello, let's call her Fiona. She said, hello, I'm Fiona. Hello, Fiona. Hello. What are you studying? English. Okay. Trying to sort of gauge that conversation was really hard. So I ended up talking to myself. I go, so when you click on here, go, oh, that's a good, and I say, well, how do you do that, Phil? That's a good question, Phil. So I was doing this sort of talking to myself routine, and just and say the odd thing. And I thought, I've killed it. I've literally going to get murdered here. Session number 5, had a number of sessions because of underlying bits and pieces.
Mm.
And I had an email from work this one day from the student saying that I was the best trainer she'd ever had. I was the most chattive and put her at her ease. And she enjoyed the way I did things. I thought, she never said anything. But it was because I didn't stop. I wasn't put off. Yes. I knew the questions that she wanted to ask, so I was asking them for her. Yeah. And I was doing it in a way that was funny, light-hearted, and she was always early. Mm-hmm. She was always at the end like, "Thank you very much, and see you next week." Very polite. And I thought, it's the way she is. It was the way, that was her mindset. This is what I was talking about with the DLD, the language disorders. Her communication was probably not very strong. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't know that because it wasn't on the paperwork. But even if I did know that, the way she was sort of coming across wasn't sort of the traditional way that we see in university land. You might see that outside of university where students don't get that far.
Yes.
But she got into university, she got through the DSA system, and she was here, she was doing well. Mm-hmm. But talkative, no. And that was quite, for me, it was quite a challenging one.
Yeah.
Because you have a two-way conversation, you have that sort of rapport, and there wasn't one.
Yeah.
Another one of my students, bless her, got frustrated with a maths. So I don't do maths. And this lady was telling me the story because I was teaching, and she was telling me the story about when she was at uni doing the maths. And she was a mature student. She had kids, and everybody else was getting it apart from her. That's how she felt. And she turned around in the middle of this lecture and went, "For God's sakes, can you do this maths in Sainsbury's shopping baskets?" And the lecturer stopped and then redid all the maths in grocery form for her. And she said at that point it made sense.
Right.
I was just like, he actually stopped, thought about it, and then carried on. I was like, that's amazing. Yeah.
Bolt an analogy to it. Yeah.
It's to have something to relate it to.
Yes, most definitely.
I don't think it was a heavy maths course because she was sort of going back and doing sort of evening classes.
You started running groceries with heavy calculus, I would have thought.
You never know. Yeah. But it's sort of things like that. It's relating with the people.
Yes.
And some lecturers, this lecturer was able to stop and think about it. And every time he saw this lady, he always then did shopping baskets with her. All the maths was in terms of
shopping baskets.
Shopping. I'm probably oversimplifying it. It's probably a bit more complicated than that. But from my point of view, I would chat to a student first.
Yeah.
Find out what course they're doing.
Yeah.
Find out sort of what their sort of challenges are as regards reading or writing, or as regards their work. Some people will tell me, some people won't.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I actually have the report and I look at it and I think, I'm not going to ask them because I'm not going to ask, I'll let them tell me.
Yeah, okay.
Because sometimes you'll see a certain condition, I would say.
Yes.
And you think, a medical one, and you're just thinking, I don't know how to approach that.
Yes, yeah.
So I'll just say, what brings you my way? And then sometimes they'll tell me a different story, and I know it's a different story to the one I'm seeing on the paperwork. I think, they don't want to tell me.
Yeah.
So I'm now not going to mention it.
Yeah.
Because they've ticked the shared information, so the information's been shared in this particular case. And I think, well, if that was me, how would I feel? If that information was now with a complete stranger? Because at this point, I'm a stranger to them.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that. Yeah.
So I think every training session is unique and different to the person, and has to be. And then probably about session 2 or session 3, they'll start, oh yeah, I've got this wrong and I've got that wrong. And then I got a whole list of things I didn't even know that was on the paperwork. I'm thinking, it's gone too far now. But I can only fix the ones that are academic.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Well, not fix, but help or support the ones that assist. That's the best way. The ones I can assist with are academic ones. And sometimes I talk about my own life skills, and masking was one that came up. When I first started at Claro Reid, I was talking about masking because as a dyslexic, you tend to mask. You tend to put on different people. You have different personas.
Yes.
Now, when I had the interview, I had that sort of shirt and tie and a professional persona because that was an interview. And then as I got used to Stuart and Andreas and the team, I've become more me, which is a different mask. And I'm not worried about making spelling mistakes because I know they'll wind me up quite happily day in and day out over it. In a good way. Stuart wasn't really aware of masking. He'd probably heard of it. Until I started speaking about it, it was like, ooh, that's a different sort of, didn't realize it was a thing. And we hear things every day, but unless it has a meaning or a focus, we hear it, but don't necessarily take it on board.
Yes, yeah.
Until it sort of comes up. So in a way, sort of working with the team has helped me because I can be myself and talk about dyslexia, and I'm talking about it to you and the masses and how it's affected me. And the team, Stuart and Andreas, are very much sort of, and Danielle. Oh, Danielle's awesome. She works for Lexable. She's one of the admin side, and she looks after all the emails and responses and things like that. And we've got kids. Well, not. She's got her family. I've got my family. Yeah. And we often talk and compare the kids, as you do. Because my eldest is autistic. My youngest is sort of PDA.
Okay.
And interesting times is how I would describe family dynamics. And it's when you talk to other people and you realize people have similar problems as well. You're not on your own.
Yes.
But it's sometimes having the ability to talk to someone to realize it's not you. When I'm doing a class, I will turn around and I'll say, nobody in this room is going to keep up. This is the maths why. I'm going to speak today at about 120 words a minute. When I get excited, I'll be up to 150 words a minute. The best of you, your keyboard skills are 40 words a minute, and your handwriting speeds are 10 to 12 words a minute. So if you're typing it in, you're 80 words behind me. You're not going to keep up. That is why you will not remember half the stuff when you leave this room later. And people, you can just see the light bulb go on like, oh, I never thought of it like that before. Everybody in this room is not going to keep up. The person next to you says they've written a load of notes. They might have written a load of notes. They haven't written everything. That's why you're students and I'm talking to you. So you can learn and then come back and learn again. And it's a way of putting people at ease, because if they can understand the reasons behind something, and that's easy to understand. Why can't I keep up? Is it me? I'm falling behind. It's not you. Everybody else is falling behind. This is the maths why. This is your reading speed. This is your writing speed. The word counts that we did earlier. Your reading speed. If somebody knows what their reading speed is, and they're being benchmarked against a 300 word a minute person, they're never going to keep up.
No.
Now, is that fair? No. But now you can show them why they've got this massive reading list and can't read it.
Yeah.
Because that reading list should take you like 2 days. Well, it's not, because your reading speed's down here.
Yeah, it's taking a week to 2 weeks. Yeah.
Now, that's if you could keep up with your reading and then understand what you've read is another thing again.
Yes. Yeah.
And that understanding is you making notes and translating it. And you making notes is 12 to 13 words a minute. So you've now got to read it at 300 words a minute, write it up at 12 words a minute, and then put it into long-term memory using visual aids. That takes time. That takes processes.
A lot of time.
And when you start sort of explaining this to people, you're like, I never thought of it like that. That's the maths behind it. That's the maths of mind.
Yeah.
Now, once you understand what your reading speed is, you understand your writing speed, you can now put techniques there, like recording your sessions. You can then break your recordings down into sort of bookmarks, so you can then target those specific points. We've got Claro Audio Note in the software with bookmarks, which is really cool. And then you have your Word document, you press record, and in the Word document, you just type your notes in. But you know your keyboard skills are 40 words a minute, so you know you're 80 words a minute short, so you keep your notes at a premium. So when you get home, you can go to your bookmark and fill it out in full. And it's understanding that helps the person then break that stress, that anxiety, that fear almost. And it's sometimes the fear is worse than just filling your mind up with the information in the first place. Because you fill your mind up with fear, you've got no room for the information.
Yes, that's totally correct, isn't it?
And there's a theory, I've forgotten the theory now. It's a pigeonhole theory. We've got about 7 pigeonholes.
Right.
And it's the number theory. Have you ever seen the one where if you remember more than 8 numbers, you start to forget? So under 8 numbers, you tend to remember.
Yeah.
It's why your phone numbers are split into 5-digit area code and a 6-digit main number.
Yes.
It's in packets. Now, somebody with ADHD or somebody with DLD or autism or any of these sort of underlying sort of symptoms, I'm sort of using the word loosely, they have the same number of pigeonholes as you and I, as everybody else. I'm dyslexic. Now, 5 of those pigeonholes will be turned up, turn the light switch on, turn the TV on. What am I having for breakfast? So you're filling your pigeonholes with normal day-to-day tasks. This is your short-term memory. Okay? Now, that's been and gone. So you end up with 2 pigeonholes left for new information. If you fill those 2 pigeonholes up for your new information with stress, you're not going to learn anything.
Yeah, I can see you. How the analogy works.
You've got to clear. His brain doesn't work that way. It's one big sort of organic blob, but it's understanding that stress, that anxiety, and so getting rid of the stress and anxiety, which is very, very difficult to do. You'll never totally get rid of it. I think when I'm doing a presentation in front of a class, I'm still stressed. Anxiety levels are still there, but it's the way I handle it.
Yes, yeah.
And that is a technique that's also worth sort of looking at. One of those techniques of revision, it's being comfortable with the information you're going to portray. It's the ability to talk about and be able to change quickly. And that comes with practice and experience, which is why students are students and teachers are teachers, because students don't have a clue. and that's why you're a student. You are never going to be as good as the teacher, because you are a student. Yeah,
by definition,
By definition, you're going to be stuck. That's why you're here to learn. And the minute people sort of think, actually, I am a student, this is all new to me, I don't get it, that's why I'm here, I'm not going to get stressed about it, I'm going to use that stress to focus my energy, I'm going to use these techniques to build a mind map, to then dictate it in, to practice and listen to it again and again and again through repetition, and then I'm going to smash my presentation a week later. And it works.
Yeah, it does. And I think it's one thing I notice, even at work, I am not as great engineer if I'm being completely stressed. So I will find techniques and ways of controlling that when it gets to the crunch, to be able to do what I need to do. And it's being aware that that's happening and then stopping the escalation of it, I suppose, would be kind of what I think of. This brings me to the kind of latter stages of this podcast. Now, every podcast I ask 3 rapid fire questions. They are quick questions from me, but don't need quick answers from you. So shall we give these a go?
Go on then.
So question number 1. What prejudices have you had about dyslexia that has been proven wrong?
None.
Jesus, that's the fastest answer I've ever had to that. You definitely took rapid fire to heart. Okay, question number 2. If an alien came down and you had to describe dyslexia to them, how would you do it?
A different way of thinking.
Yeah.
Thinking outside the box, seeing the bigger picture.
And the final question of the podcast, and you're not allowed to answer Claro Software, is, seeing as this is the Dyslexia Life Hack show, what is your favourite dyslexia life hack?
My favourite dyslexia life hack? Gosh. Talking. Life hack itself. The best technique for dyslexia is to talk about it.
Yes.
The best way of overcoming your fear is to talk about it.
Yeah,
I love the bit in Crocodile Dundee, and they're out in the outback. Croc Dundee and the lady.
Yeah, okay.
And they're in the pub, and she goes, "What do you guys do for a psychiatrist around here? And you've got to unload your feelings." And Croc Dundee goes, "Feelings? We've got Wally." And she goes, "What's Wally?" "Well, you tell Wally. Wally tells everybody, no more problem."
Yes, I think I vaguely remember that.
And I think that is stuck in my head because it's so true. If you don't have a problem with it yourself, and you are content with who you are, then it doesn't matter.
Yes.
Because you can talk about it, and if people don't understand, then they don't understand. That's up to them. Yeah. You'll have people who are engaged, who want to learn, who want to help, and you have people that aren't engaged. Yes. And that's society. Yeah. That you also have to accept as well, because people are people. Different backgrounds, different experiences.
Yeah.
You shouldn't force an opinion or an idea on anybody.
Yeah.
You can have an opinion, you can voice your opinion, you can talk about it. Whether or not that person listens and accepts or has a different viewpoint to that, it's down to them. But if you can talk about it, if you are content about it, then it doesn't matter what other people say.
Yeah.
Because you've already got that piece.
Yeah.
And that's so what's my favorite thing about life hacks is actually the talking about it in the first place. Because you can have all the software in the world. You can have all the support in the world. If you don't accept or understand that, it's not going to work.
Yeah. I've been guilty of that, having all the support and not rejecting it, but because I didn't accept that about myself, probably not getting the best out of it.
So you've got to accept yourself first.
Yeah.
You've got to think to yourself, but this is going back to what we said earlier. People think, "Oh, you're dyslexic. Oh dear, there's something wrong with me," and they feel let down. I felt a failure.
Yeah.
For all my growing up, I wanted to be normal.
Yeah, me too.
That was my ambition in life. My ambition was to leave home and be normal.
Yeah.
Not get a job or anything like that. I just wanted to be like everybody else.
Yeah.
Because I didn't understand.
Yeah.
I didn't. You say, "Well, didn't you understand what was wrong with you?" I didn't know I was wrong in the first place.
Yeah.
I was still living in Cloud Phil. So when people said, "Oh, it's you, your mind is this," I was like, "Well, I don't understand." It was just blah 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 in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the DLD bit probably that's not diagnosed. I didn't understand the words. I didn't understand what they were saying, so it had no impact.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until really meeting Stuart, actually. I'm going to bring tears to his eyes now if he listens to this. Meeting Stuart made the biggest difference about being able to talk to to people.
Okay.
Stuart often talks about his academic background, but he allows other people to talk about their backgrounds.
Yes.
And by talking, brings people together, understanding, and just like Wally in the outback, doesn't become a problem anymore.
No. Great.
And that's, I think that's the important message.
Yeah.
All the assistive stuff in the world is a brilliant help. The NMH, the one-to-ones, the assessors do a cracking job. Brilliant job. And the stuff really works. It genuinely does. I've seen it work many times.
Yeah.
But it works for the people who accept, they think, right, this is me. This is how my mind works. This is what I need. And this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
If you're thinking there's something wrong with me, I'm going to hide, then you need to talk about that. There isn't anything wrong. There's nothing wrong. That's why I do the maths with my students. I do the 80 words a minute, 20 words a minute talking. No one's going to keep up. Not even the best people, unless you do like 3 years of legal secretary and learn shorthand, you're going to keep up.
Yeah.
And even then, you should be in a law court, not in the lecture theatre.
Yeah.
So it's that understanding that's important.
Yes,
you've got to understand yourself. Now, sometimes it takes somebody to help the person understand.
Yeah.
And to be able to talk about it. In this case, it was Stuart.
Yeah. Oh, well, hats off to Stuart.
And I used to talk to my students as a one-to-one, but that's a one-to-one.
Yeah.
I'm now talking to you and the masses.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is now, this is now outside of my comfort zone. Because if I'm talking to a one-to-one, that person potentially, I say, well, forget most of what I say. But this is going to be on the internet.
It is.
Now, that person, I've got students who speak to me 7 years later.
Yeah.
They've done several courses and they still phone me up and go, can you help me with this? I had one student that did referencing for 7 years on the trot through about 3 different courses. And I'd technically finished with her 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
On her first course, but still helped her out. And she's finished now, but which is cool. But if you have a rapport and you can be yourself, that is, and it's not just for dyslexia or neurodiverse. This is actually for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of learning and understanding your own skill set is very, very important. And yes, we could all be brain surgeons. Because Tony Blair in the government said, you can do anything, you can all go to university. I wouldn't want to be a brain surgeon. Halfway through the operation, my brain would just switch off and I'd be like, what am I doing? So having an understanding of your own capabilities and having a realistic target. Now, I say my ambition was to leave home and be normal. Mm-hmm. I think I've left home and become more than normal, if that makes sense.
Right, yes.
So I achieved everything I want to do and more, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I'm waffling. Sorry. You've got lots to edit here. I do apologise.
It's okay. Well,
you can make 2 episodes if you want to.
It's the Joy Long Form podcast. You have the time to share all these stories. That's why this thing runs on for as long as it needs to run on.
Bless you.
Just before we kind of sign off, is there anything else you'd like to add or share, or where can people find your Claro if they have liked anything you said and want to get in touch?
Well, if they go to clarosoftware.com, if you are an assessor or a DSA trainer, you can always book an appointment. And we can discuss the software and bits and pieces with yourselves, because that's really cool. And then you can help other people, because I'm all about helping the people that help the people.
Yes.
Because I was helping one-to-one. Now I can help the people that help the people and reach more people.
Yes.
Which is sort of
exponential growth on that.
The bit I like about Claro, I can help more people.
Yeah.
As regards students who might be struggling, government website, just Google DSA. Plenty of information on DSA. For students who are thinking of starting in September, Google it now. Sign up now.
Yeah, we're talking in May, that is.
Yeah. Oh, bless you, because it's the internet, isn't it? Simple reason, because come September, it's just a mad rush. Everybody wakes up and thinks, I've got to go to uni next week. And it melts. So it's start doing your research. Just Google DSA, Disability Student Allowance, and look at the funding that is available. Start the ball rolling as soon as possible and ask lots of questions.
Yeah.
Would be my advice.
Thank you.
And don't wait to get to uni. You can apply for DSA with college and upwards, further education.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Phil, for taking the time to come on this podcast and sharing lots of really interesting stories. So I want to thank you. And I want to thank everybody else for taking the time to listen. And I will see you in the next episode. Goodbye for now.